The house is quiet. Your phone lights the dark room. A new message from him. And you hesitate before opening it. Not because you're in love, but because you're tired. Tired of eating dinner alone. Tired of nights that feel too long. At 30, you would have ignored it. You would have known why. Something about him doesn't match you. And you would have felt it instantly. But something has changed now. Not your values. Not your emotional intelligence. It changed in the silence of your nights. As after 40, loneliness starts negotiating dangerous things. Things your dignity would never have negotiated before. And that scares you. It's not desperation. It's something quieter. More subtle. Harder to admit. You start thinking, maybe I'm too demanding. Maybe I should give him a chance. Maybe this is enough. But deep down, a part of your soul notices something. This is not the man you would choose. This is the man silence is trying to justify. And this is where the question almost no one says out loud is born. Is loneliness opening your heart? Or slowly lowering your standards? There is a specific moment at night when your mind begins talking to you. Not during work. Not when the house is full of noise. It happens when everything slows down. The kitchen light is still on. Your phone vibrates on the table. And you feel something strange in your chest. As if your mind is trying to convince you of something. The cup of tea is already cold. The clock keeps ticking on the wall. The entire house seems to breathe silence. And in that silence your thoughts grow louder. Small justifications begin to appear. Small concessions start to feel reasonable. And suddenly something that once felt obvious begins to feel confusing. You look again at the conversation on your phone. The messages seem normal. Nothing clearly wrong. Nothing clearly right either. And your mind starts working. Maybe he isn't that incompatible. Maybe you are being too demanding. Maybe the problem is you. And this is exactly where many women begin doubting themselves. Intelligent women. Emotionally mature women. Women who have always trusted their own discernment. Suddenly they start questioning themselves. Not because they lack intelligence, but because of emotional silence. And that changes everything. There is something happening inside you that almost nobody explains. Something that rarely appears in everyday conversations. It isn't weakness. It isn't neediness. It is a deep mechanism of the human mind. A mechanism psychology has long understood. A mechanism described clearly by Carl Jung. And when you understand this, something starts making sense. Jung observed that when an emotional need remains unmet for a long time, the unconscious begins pressing on the conscious mind. It does not tolerate prolonged emptiness. The psyche seeks balance. It seeks connection. It seeks belonging. Even if the path it finds is not ideal. Even if something inside you resists. This does not mean you lost your emotional clarity. It does not mean your maturity disappeared. It does not mean you became weak. It simply means your soul is still human. And human beings need connection. They need presence. They need emotional exchange. And the long absence of that leaves quiet marks. Over the years the heart learns to be strong. It learns to be independent. It learns not to rely on anyone. And you build an entire life like this. A beautiful life. Stable life. A respectable life. But some needs of the soul do not disappear. So the mind begins doing something curious. It tries to relieve emotional tension. It tries to reduce the weight of silence. It tries to open small doors of possibility. Even when those doors are not ideal. Even when something inside you hesitates. Even when your intuition quietly raises an eyebrow. And this is where the inner conflict begins. Because deep down, you still know who truly matches you. Your intuition has not disappeared. Your discernment is still alive. Your awareness is still alert. But now there is another voice in the room. A quieter voice. A more tired voice. And it simply whispers, maybe this is enough. And what almost nobody realizes is that this voice did not begin now. It started long before your 40s. Long before the last message on your phone. Long before the last romantic disappointment. Comes from an older pattern. An invisible pattern. And that is what we need to look at next. There is a detail in your story that almost no one notices. Not your friends. Not even your therapist in the first sessions. Not even you for a long time. Because it doesn't appear in big decisions. It appears in small moments. In quiet pauses. And in subtle emotional concessions. Maybe it started very early. Long before your 40s. Long before the last relationship that ended badly. Maybe it began when you learned something silent about love. Something no one explained with words. But your soul understood perfectly. That loving sometimes meant enduring. And hoping the other person would eventually change. Maybe you watched someone in your family love like that. Love too much. Endure too much. Wait too long. And without noticing, that became an invisible map. An emotional map. A map your heart started following. Even when your mind said you shouldn't. So when you meet someone emotionally distant, something curious happens inside you. One part of your mind notices the warning. But another part recognizes the pattern. Recognizes the territory. Recognizes the dynamic. And without realizing it, you already know how to move there. As if that kind of love feels familiar. That's why sometimes emotionally available men feel strange. Too predictable. Too calm. Almost without mystery. While emotionally confusing men create another feeling. A tension. An expectation. A story that seems to demand resolution. But there is a psychological cost to this. A cost that does not appear at the beginning. It appears later. When emotional energy starts draining. When you realize you are trying to sustain something alone. When the effort stops feeling like partnership. And starts feeling like survival. And then one night arrives. That night when you look at your phone. And something uncomfortable becomes clear. You're not excited about him. You are simply relieved not to be alone. And that difference changes everything. Even if no one else sees it. Because the human heart senses truth before the mind admits it. It knows when something is connection. And when something is just distraction from loneliness. But loneliness has a dangerous skill. It knows how to disguise itself as opportunity. It knows how to look like hope. Even when it isn't. And this is exactly where many women start negotiating with their own intuition. They call it maturity. They call it flexibility. They call it giving someone a chance. But deep down something else is happening. A quiet self-abandonment. Almost invisible. But deeply real. Because when you begin accepting less than what your soul recognizes, something inside you becomes silent. It does not scream. It does not protest. It simply watches. Watching as you try to convince yourself. Watching as you ignore small signals. And waiting to see where this goes. Indeed, this is where the most uncomfortable question appears. Are you trying to build love? Or simply trying to escape the silence of your own night? If these words touch something quiet inside you, it may be because your soul already knows it needs clarity, not more confusion. This channel exists for those nights when no one talks about what truly hurts, yet every heart feels it. So click the button now and subscribe. And continue walking with us through conversations that restore discernment, peace, and emotional courage. Because sometimes all a strong woman needs is to hear the right truth at the right moment. And maybe this video arrived exactly when your soul needed it. At the beginning it seems small. One extra conversation. One reply you wouldn't have sent before. One date you know doesn't promise much. Nothing feels serious. Nothing feels like a big mistake. Just small emotional concessions. Almost invisible at first. You're still the same woman. Intelligent. Independent. Aware of who you are. Your life remains organized. Your work remains stable. Your friends remain present. But something inside begins to shift. Because every small concession carries a silent weight. A weight that does not appear on the first date. Nor in the first messages. It appears later. When you start justifying strange behaviors. When you start explaining absences. When you begin defending someone who barely tries. And that exhausts the soul. Your emotional energy slowly starts draining. You notice you are trying to keep something alive. Something that never really started whole. You invest attention. You invest time. You invest patience. But rarely receive the same presence back. And the imbalance grows quietly. Then something strange happens inside you. You begin doubting your own intuition. The same intuition that was always your compass. You start asking if you are too demanding, if you expect too much. If maybe adult love is just this. A silent agreement of imperfections. And that doubt becomes heavy. This is where many women start adapting too much. Understanding too much. Forgiving too much. Justifying too much. Each attempt looks noble at first. Looks like maturity. Looks like emotional growth. But often it is simply exhaustion disguised as understanding. Because there is a profound difference between maturity and self-abandonment. Maturity protects your dignity. Self-abandonment begins negotiating with it. Maturity accepts human imperfection. Self-abandonment ignores important signals. And when that line becomes blurred, the heart starts carrying unnecessary weight. Loneliness then does something dangerous. It begins turning minimal presence into something valuable. A message becomes hope. A meeting becomes possibility. A simple gesture becomes promise. Little by little expectation grows, even when reality does not follow. And the heart senses the difference. At that point, emotional emptiness increases, because you are not only alone anymore. Now you are emotionally invested in uncertainty. Something that consumes energy. Something that creates expectation. Something that offers no real stability. And the mind begins to feel the weight of this ambiguity, even when it tries to ignore it. And then one specific night arrives. A night when everything becomes clear for a few seconds. You look at your phone. Look at the conversation. Look at the silence between messages. And a question rises strongly inside you. A question your soul already knows. FIWR. And afraid of loneliness. Would I still be trying to make this work? There comes a moment when something inside you needs to stop. Stop justifying. Stop adapting. Stop trying to turn every connection into a possibility for love. Because the truth is simple. Almost uncomfortable to admit. Not every presence deserves space in your life. The first healing begins with a quiet decision. You stop negotiating with your intuition. That inner voice that notices details. That senses subtle misalignments. That recognizes when something doesn't match your soul. For a long time you tried to rationalize that voice. But your intuition was never the problem. It was always your protection. Psychologically, this is called reconnecting with inner discernment. A process studied by Carl Jung. Jung explained that emotional maturity happens when consciousness reconnects with its inner center. Not with external pressures. Not with social expectations. Not with the fear of time passing. But with the quiet truth the heart recognizes. And when that happens, the mind realigns. Then you begin observing more calmly. Without rush. Without needing to fill the emptiness immediately. You notice who truly shows up. Who sustains deeper conversations. Who respects your time. Who demonstrates real presence. And who is only occupying temporary space. This shift seems small on the outside. But inside it changes everything. Because you stop trying to make something work. And start observing whether it already works naturally. The excessive effort disappears. The anxiety softens. And silence stops feeling like an enemy. The second healing is even deeper. You learn something very few people practice. You learn to respect the rhythm of your own soul. Not the rhythm of fear. Not the rhythm of social pressure. But the rhythm of inner peace. And that completely changes how you choose. When a woman learns this, she stops searching for emotional validation everywhere. She begins noticing something powerful. Loneliness is not always a problem. Sometimes it is a space of inner reorganization. A time of emotional clearing. A time of reconnecting with who you truly are. And something curious starts happening when this peace appears. Desperation disappears. Urgency disappears. The need to accept less disappears. You no longer reply to every message. You no longer accept every invitation. You no longer explain yourself to every absence. And your energy begins to change. Because discernment creates a new atmosphere around you. An atmosphere of quiet respect. Emotionally unavailable people notice this quickly. They sense they will not have easy access to your attention. And naturally they move away. Not because of rejection. But because your energy has changed. And then something surprising happens inside you. The loneliness that once felt heavy starts transforming into peace. A strange peace at first. Almost unfamiliar. But deeply stable. And in that healthier silence, something new begins to grow. There is a quiet question that appears when the house is still. Not when the mind is busy, but when the heart begins to slow down. You look at your own story. At the relationships that didn't work. At the people who came and left your life. And a difficult thought appears. Why does this keep happening to me? For a long time it just feels like bad luck. Wrong people. Wrong timing. Broken expectations. But as the years pass something starts revealing itself. Maybe it wasn't only loss. Maybe it wasn't only rejection. Maybe it was protection. Because not every relationship that ends is truly a failure. Some are necessary interruptions. Quiet interruptions. Interruptions that protect your soul from the wrong path. But in the moment of pain, no one sees this. The mind only feels abandonment. The heart only feels silence. And time feels cruel. Yet maturity slowly reveals something deeper. Some absences are answers. Some misalignments are protection. Some doors that never opened were actually guarding something inside you. Guarding your peace. Guarding your dignity. Guarding the love that hasn't arrived yet. This is where faith enters in a different way. Not as an easy explanation. Not as a magical promise. But as a quiet presence. Like someone who sees your entire story. Even when you can only see fragments. Even when everything feels confusing. Even when your heart is tired. And this is where ancient biblical wisdom begins to make sense. Not as a religious rule, but as deep emotional protection. The Bible says in Proverbs 13 verse 20, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." In other words, who you allow beside you shapes the destiny of your soul. And that changes everything. Maybe some relationships never worked because they were not aligned with your path. Maybe some people disappeared because they were never meant to walk beside you. Maybe some doors remained closed because opening them would have cost your peace. But in moments of loneliness that is hard to accept, because the human heart prefers imperfect company over unfamiliar silence. Yet God often works through silence, through pauses, through waiting that feels longer than expected. Not to punish, but to align paths, to mature discernment, to prepare encounters that do not depend on desperation, but on true alignment. And when this understanding begins growing inside you, something changes deeply. You stop asking, "Why didn't it happen?" and start asking something different. What was God protecting me from? And that question opens a new way of seeing your story. A calmer way, a wiser way, a more hopeful way. Because maybe the loneliness you feel today is not abandonment. Maybe it is simply the pace God is using to prepare something that has not arrived yet. Maybe now you are looking at your story differently. Not only through the losses, not only through the silences, but through what you learned along the way. Every disappointment left a signal. Every relationship brought an invisible lesson. Every waiting season built something inside you. Something many people never develop. Because emotional maturity is not born in comfort. It is born in life's pauses. In relationships that didn't work. In moments when you had to rebuild yourself alone. In days when silence felt too heavy. And even then you continued. You kept living. You kept growing. Today you are not the same woman who loved at 25 or 30. Your soul has become more aware. Your vision has become clearer. Your heart has learned to notice signals earlier. And that is not loss. That is emotional evolution. Even when it sometimes feels like loneliness, in truth, it is discernment. Because there is a profound difference between being alone and being misaligned with your own soul. Many people live accompanied, yet deeply disconnected from themselves. They live in relationships that drain energy, that confuse the heart, that silence their inner truth. And that costs far more than solitude. When you learn to respect your inner peace, something changes deeply in the way you live. You stop chasing every connection. You stop trying to prove your emotional value. You stop accepting relationships that require constant effort just to exist. And you begin doing something far more powerful. You begin living in alignment with who you truly are. And that alignment creates a new life. This new life is not perfect. It still has silence, still has long nights, still has moments of doubt. But now something exists that perhaps was not so clear before. There is peace inside you. A peace that does not depend on another person. A peace born from awareness. And when that peace settles within you, love stops being a desperate need. It becomes what it was always meant to be. A meeting. A shared path. A mutual construction. Not an emotional rescue. Not an escape from loneliness. So maybe the real new beginning is not finding someone immediately. Maybe the real beginning is recovering something that was forgotten. Your emotional calm. Your discernment. Your ability to choose slowly. Without urgency. Without fear of time. Without negotiating your dignity. Because when a woman finally understands this, she stops asking if she is falling behind. And begins to realize something far more powerful. She is not late. She is awakening. And that awakening can completely change the direction of her life. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to our channel right now. Here we talk about the silent struggles many women live with. but few people explain with clarity. Each video is a space to recover discernment, emotional peace, and real hope. Maybe you are not as alone in this journey as you thought. And maybe this is exactly where your soul began to awaken. And for you who stayed until the end of this video, leave a comment with the word discernment. This is more than a comment. It is a spiritual decision to protect your heart and your peace. Many women here are also going through this same quiet awakening. And when you declare it, something inside you begins to realign again. May God strengthen your clarity and guide your next steps.